You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 18th of June. Union behind UAF is losing members fast, so it wants to invade the schools. Social workers to seize baby of wife of serving soldier when it is born. Both plaques for Warrington IRA bombs stolen and found. Greece heading for more chaos. Muslim Brotherhood not so apparent winner in Egypt. Obama drifting towards war with Iran. Thought for the day, is there hope for the family unit? Finally, a kebab made from 7 cows breaks the record. UK News. The Unite Union is losing members so fast it has drawn up plans to recruit schoolchildren. Reports are circulating that Unite are voting on a motion at their next conference to strategically map where and when schools could be potential targets for trade union educational programmes, and to ensure that dedicated trained Unite personnel are able to approach schools in order to gain and maximise access. This is the union that backs the Labour Party with workers' unions' fees, whether they vote Labour or not. The Unite Union is also behind Unite Against Facism, and now they want to spread their filth even deeper into our schools. Why try to take baby from EDL mother but not from terrorists? Social workers from Durham County Council want to seize the baby as soon as it is born because of their concerns about the mother's links to the English Defence League. Durham County Council has told Tony McLeod she would pose a risk of significant harm to the baby. Social workers fear the child will become radicalised with EDL views and want it put up for adoption immediately. Mrs McLeod, who is 35 weeks pregnant, is a former leading member of the EDL, in which she was notorious as English Angel. The 25-year-old has a string of convictions for violence, including butting and biting a police officer after an EDL march in 2010, and she has been banned from owning dogs after setting a pit bull on a former partner. However, her cause has been taken up by the Lib Dem MP John Hemmings, who, despite his apparent loathing for the EDL, raised it in the Commons. He contrasts her treatment with that of the extremist Islamic cleric Abu Qatada, who was allowed to remain with his children when he was briefly remanded on bail earlier this year, as the government tries to deport him. A World at 8 reporter commented, "As they say, today it is the racists, tomorrow it could be the liberals. She is the wife of a serving soldier, and I think it is disgusting." Warrington police have caught the man who stole a plaque commemorating the fallen in an IRA attack in Warrington town centre on March 20th, 1993. Tim Parry, 12, and Jonathan Ball, 3, were killed when 2 bombs were detonated and 54 people were injured. The man, a Lithuanian named as Spartacus Krashukas, aged 26, has been jailed for 18 months at the expense of the British taxpayer instead of being deported. However, there was a second plaque, and this also has been stolen recently. Currently the police have 3 unnamed young men who confessed to the theft, and the plaque has been recovered. Euronews. Greece teetering on the brink of chaos as their elections ended in stalemate. Early indications suggested the centre-right New Democracy Party, which wants to keep the euro, had a slight lead over the far-left anti-EU and austerity Syriza Party. The right-wing Golden Dawn Party, although being ignored by the media, is gaining ground. They want Greece to return to the drachma. A World at 8 reporter commented, "It would seem that history is repeating itself in Europe. The Conservatives have failed. The Socialists always fail financially, and then we have the rise of the right wing, which is inevitable. It would seem right for Greece to leave the Eurozone, revert back to the drachma and sort themselves out. The blackmail money from the IMF will not go far or last long. The euro has proved it is not fit for purpose in most countries. The G20 will meet and organise an IMF bailout for Greece today." World News. Muslim Brotherhood not so apparent winner in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood is claiming victory in Egypt's presidential elections today. At the same time, the Egyptian military has imposed an interim constitution, giving the military far-reaching power and stripping the president of most authority. Most interestingly, the military retained the power to veto any declaration of war. The Egyptian military fear the Muslim Brotherhood with its close links to Saudi Arabia more than it fears the Egyptian people. Obama drifting towards war with Iran. The Atlantic, a news magazine, reports the most undercovered story in Washington is how President Obama, under the influence of election year politics, is letting America drift towards war with Iran. Obama has decided that a negotiated solution to the Iranian nuclear programme would reduce his chance of re-election. He will not reduce sanctions as part of the negotiating process, even in exchange for Iranian concession that it would move the world further from war. Thought for the day. Is there hope for the family unit in the UK? Well, I have my doubts. Since the end of the last World War, there has been an insidious attack from our governments on the family unit. Now, I'm not saying that certain things did not need sorting, but we have now a very well established Marxist system in place for punishing people who do not conform to the idealised cultural norm. Now, I do not mean the Aryan ideal. We are miles away from that, in fact. The pendulum has swung to the exact opposite of that impossible dream deliberately. Any reference to perfection is treated the same way that the village idiots were treated in the good old bad old days. There is a massive and mainly anti-white social engineering programme in place now. All the social services and the health services have it, plus the judiciary is well tooled up. Spouting epithets like unfit parenting and even abuse, they can and do take babies away from their biological parents at a whim. This might seem very odd when in fact the last few cases of horrific child abuse within the family or extended family have been investigated at the last minute, if at all. Most of the hand slapping has occurred well after the event and death of the child. We had the case of Tony McLeod, who I believe is an ex-English Defence League lady, obviously not balmy enough not to think of her country, who is the wife of a serving soldier, who when her baby is born it'll be taken into care, a misnomer in itself. Why? Because she is deemed a racist and might influence her child in like manner. Absolute rubbish. By the time the little darling has gone to state school, he or she will be spouting thoughts from a little red book and engaged or whatever to a Somali. She or he might even have pleased the establishment immensely by converting to Islam. Now on the other hand, we have what I think is an equally disturbing case of mother in the States who parades her 6-year-old daughter in front of God knows who in the name of beauty pageants. She is a mini page 3 model, bless her, with more makeup than a tranny, who is obviously sexualised in a very unhealthy way. Beauty pageants are coming over here for babies, and although I have nothing against beauty pageants, I do feel they can open the door with children so young being available or being seen to be. Whose abuse is worse? That of the mother who is ex-ADL and needs help not having her children taken away, or the mother who deliberately provides pictures of her toddler dolled up like a lady of the night, in fact a pedo smorgasbord in the public eye? It is clear the government are using their given powers to punish or alter the course of family life. The media constantly attacks the 50s and 60s. Well, I grew up in those times and believe me, they were not perfect, but they were a lot better than the youth have now. Education for a start was education, not a social forerunner for a multicultural society. You had grammar schools for children whose parents cared about education but could not afford the public and private school systems. Village schools were considered amongst the best. The inner city council schools were leaps and bounds ahead from the comprehensive crap our children are privy to nowadays. In the great rounding up of all establishments of further education are universities, and this includes art colleges, which is just ridiculous. Art colleges should remain art colleges. Universities should remain just a few prime unis as before, and polytechnics, which turned out many brilliant engineers, should have remained just that. But of course, to adopt uni status, they also had the blackmail of extra funding, to mainly encompass the extra bods they would take on. Without going on for hours, the education system in the old days was leagues ahead of what we have now. I'm not saying it was easier for children or parents, it wasn't. My mother worked long and hard to keep me in private school, and for that I will always be grateful, especially when I know of many parents when my children were young who had large houses, several cars, holidays coming out of the wazoo, and still let their children take advantage of the state system, when they could easily pay fees and leave those places for those less advantaged, which is what they were for in the first place, wasn't it? Back to the family. As a society, we women are now encouraged to give birth to challenged children, abort the healthy ones, even not get married at all but have a career until you're too old to have children, at which stage you just go out and find some guy to give you a baby whilst not telling him. It is all just too bizarre for words. We have young girls suing social services for not removing them from the family home. Admittedly, on reading the conditions of that home they were a bit odd, but probably no more usual in that area of Birmingham 30 years ago than is acknowledged. Her mother was also a bit odd, plus all the men, but it is a story that runs through all countries and all times. A feckless and promiscuous mother with a series of even odder guys. It will help Miss Elliott's case that she is apparently half Parky, her words not mine, But suing, most of the people involved will either be dead or retired. We have an Ofsted chief, Sir Michael Wilshaw, who states that children from an anti-learning culture should be taken and put into boarding schools. Read Dotheboys Hall for that one, unless we, the taxpayer, will be paying for the really expensive public boarding schools for these remnants, as we do for Somali immigrants to have homes on Millionaires' Row. Why don't we take all children from disadvantaged homes and put them in huge orphanages to rot like they do in China and Russia? Well, you have to disadvantage the parents first, don't you? What do you think is happening in the UK today? The poor are getting poorer, the immigrants are getting richer, and scum, like cream, rises to the top. There are going to be a lot more disadvantaged parents about. These people need help, not vilification. Parents or step-parents who abuse their charges for years need hanging. Parents who are poor and ignorant but not cruel need all the help society can give. Children in the care system do not grow. They remain stunted and antisocial. All children, even ones from so-called good homes, resent their parents and grumble. That is what kids do. Even when those children are middle-aged, they still grumble. And I know because I did and my children do. The thought of the government taking children away from their natural parents undermines all the democratic processes we like to think of as normal in Britain. We now have crimes against children in this country that were not here during the 50s, and I am not talking murderers or paedophiles here. They will always be with us, I'm afraid. We have Muslim grooming, we have child gangs, we have Eastern European child slavers, we have female circumcision, we have child labour, we even have a 10-year-old child beaten with a steel ladle for not reading enough verses of the Koran by a heavily pregnant Muslim woman, Aisha Parveen. This child was in the kitchen of Parveen. She was not her child. What was she? A slave is probably nearer the truth. Parveen has been jailed for 9 months for causing over 57 injuries, and she needed a translator throughout the trial. Now, will her children be taken away? She is now divorced, so who is looking after them? Will Child Services investigate that one? The answer is no. It is the Brits who come under such investigations. We of the feckless, drunken, oversexed, stupid and greedy genes that warrant the nowadays usual steps of child removal. It is our children in schools who are open to sexualisation into the ways of homosexuals and worse. Now, I'm not homophobic, but to open that particular door to children of 6 is wicked. But as the Jesuits used to say, give me the first 5 years of a child's life and I give you the man. Schools are even being approached to imitate a sort of Hitler Youth in the anti-fascist Unite Union, which smacks of thoughts of Chairman Mao, and what can parents do against that? We have at least 2 generations of undereducated, over-sexualised, diversity-ridden Marxist robots who think the world owes them a living, even more so when they pass with dubious ease into one of the many flourishing third-rate universities that now abound. We would even have voluntary euthanasia for all the wrinklies who have worked all their lives for a decent end to theirs, and supported various children and grandchildren. They are to be killed off. Because the popular view is, to encapsulate it, white Brits are an ageing population, and we have allowed so much immigration that we cannot expect young immigrants to keep our oldies alive and well when they have vast families and relations of their own, who we must as a nation accommodate. There, easy speak, innit? So all in all, these parents who are lacking in social skills and parenting skills should be given care in the community or similar. They should not be deprived of a family life, surely. What about their human rights? How can we as a party help these people? It needs further investigation, and quickly. And finally, a 1-ton doner kebab made from 7 cows has been crowned the largest on the planet by Guinness World Record officials in Turkey. Officials confirmed that the gigantic meat mountain, weighing a whopping 1,198 kgs and measuring 2.5 metres, was a new world record on Tuesday. It took 10 cooks to create the gutbuster, which had to be held in place by a crane while it was officially measured. The previous record was set in Australia in 2004, the Turkish one weighing almost double the size of it. Working from a special set of scaffolding, the collection of cooks later cut the meat feast up into pieces for spectators at Ankara Shopping Fest in Genlik Park, Ankara. The modern version of the doner kebab was invented by Mahmut Agan in 1971, who first came up with the idea of putting the meat inside a pita bread. A World Date reporter commented, "I'm going to make an offside remark. I just hope that is all there is in this kebab. But then it is in Turkey, so no fears for the local young girls out there." You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.